Welcome to No Borders with Brian and Carrie. Today's episode is going to be about how to set your budget for full-time travel. We get this question quite often, and I get it because this was some area that we spent a lot of time having to really figure out what our budget was going to be when we hit the road. There's a lot of factors that go into this.
Right, and we did a lot of research, but we didn't really know how much of an impact or how correct our research would be. We started in Spain, and great choice. We love Spain.
Yeah.
Alicante still is one of our top, and Sevilla is still one of our favorite big cities. It was amazing.
So much to do.
So much to do. A beautiful city, but we were very cautious going in those first 3 months. We were really pinching our pennies.
Well, and I think that is the way that you should be, right?
Yes.
You don't want to jump out the gate and be spending more than what you feel is comfortable doing. And I think that that is a nervous area for a lot of people, because if you're not a really highly budgeted person, it's very easy sometimes to jump into old habits and get to the destination that you're going to be and be like, oh, well, no, that place looks really great. Let's go to dinner there, or let's go and see this and that and the other thing. And all of those things add up. So your budget is hugely important. Staying in that budget is hugely important so that you continue doing what you were doing.
Yeah, you know, I just think back to those days, and I think we didn't eat out really more than once or twice for the first 2 months we were on the road. And you know, we started right away doing this YouTube channel, and we got some negative comments about, you guys need to introduce food into your videos. Well, we would, but we're too cautious of not spending money. We need to stay on budget. And that's what we were doing.
And we were doing that. And I don't think we have any regrets of doing that,
Not
because
at all.
what that showed us is first off, that we could do it if we needed to. Yeah, in hindsight, I don't know if we would have necessarily picked Spain as our first option, because it was expensive, you know, but it's what we knew at the time. It was a place that we wanted to go to, and so we did it. And I'm glad that we did things the way that we did, as far as being incredibly budgeted. We really worked hard to stay on budget, and we had a pretty low budget at that time.
We had a pretty low budget, and I understand what you're saying about starting in Spain. I, on the other hand, I'm kind of glad we started in Spain, so we could see. And when we say expensive, we're not saying, you know, expensive. We're saying more expensive than our budget would allow. Now, we stayed on budget, but it was difficult. So I think going from Spain, and then we went to Romania, it made that adjustment a lot easier. It was like, oh wait, this is a lot less expensive than Spain. We can stay on budget and maybe enjoy life a little more.
Yeah, I think we saw that benefit of choosing to balance throughout the year destinations, that some that are a little bit more costly and then some that are considerably less. And so your yearly budget, when you're setting like what you want to spend monthly, but then you're also going to have yearly, your monthly budget is going to kind of vary a little bit. The whole main point you want to get to is you want that yearly budget to be meeting where you're at.
Right, you want to stay under that yearly ceiling. So the first thing you want to do is you want to calculate your fixed expenses. All your expenses that come up monthly that you have to pay. That's your phone, your insurance, all of those fixed expenses. Now, one key element to this is you want to be debt-free.
Yeah,
you desperately want to be debt-free, because otherwise that's a fixed expense that you're going to have to pay. If you can get rid of that fixed expense, do it.
Right, and that is such a key element to being able to maintain a really good budget, is that when you carry any of those expenses with you monthly on the road, that takes away from what you have to spend on all of those other things like your accommodations and stuff. So making sure that, you know, any loans that you have are paid off, making sure, you know, for us, the only fixed expense we really have is our insurance. You know, health insurance is a must, and so that is a for sure sure we're going to be paying that. But you know, our cell phone, there's been months we haven't had a cell phone plan. There's been months that we do, and now I have the eSIM, so I just pretty much do. But it's $13 a month is what I've been paying, which I haven't had a
plan for 2 months.
Right.
This is my second month with nothing at all. I just use Wi-Fi. If we need to do anything important, besides talk to my kids and family, we use Carrie's phone.
Right. And so those are the things where you can kind of change them, like our Netflix that we have and stuff. But so keep those at the absolute minimum that you possibly can, and you are going to very much appreciate that going forward.
Especially in the beginning, because you can always add Netflix or Hulu or whatever else you want as you go down the road, when you know exactly how much you're going to spend. In the beginning, cut it tight.
Now that you've researched the areas you want to go, and that's great, you figured out what sounds really good. Now you got to dig deep and figure out what it's going to cost you to be in those areas. Now there's a website that we specifically use. I'm going to link that down below so you can check it out. It is a great resource. It's going to break down for you all of those things that you want to find out. How much is the average accommodation? How much is the average food cost going to be? I have found them to be very, very much on.
How much for a pint of beer?
Yes. How much beer, wine, any of those kinds of things you're going to be doing, transportation, what the average price of that. We would dig very deep. I didn't necessarily go with theirs for accommodation, because theirs for accommodation is more a rental.
Yeah, long-term rental type. Yeah.
So when we're looking at a place to go, or when we were kind of figuring out what our budget was going to be, we researched the actual area. So say Spain. And I would look at Airbnb in Valencia and see what we would be able to get for certain ranges, you know. And so any of those places, say for your first year that you're looking at, figure out like what each month you'd be spending for accommodations, transportation, entertainment,
food. You know, it's once you've figured out what your fixed monthly expenses are, this will help you figure out what your daily expenses will be. Obviously, you get your daily expenses, you add them up, you add it to your monthly expenses, and there you go, you've got a budget. But you know, it can differ from country to country.
Now, when we started, to kind of give you a good example, you know, we had to talk through what we wanted our budget to look like each month, what we were both comfortable spending each month. We kind of came in, we first started with like $900, that was way too low, and then I think we kind of landed on $1,100. Now since then we have adjusted things a little bit, because we realized that we wanted to spend a little bit more. It was worth our sanity to spend a little bit more money on accommodations, and so we've increased it a little bit, not by much.
Right,
so,
now because you're gonna ask, I know you are, that's $1,100 a month each.
Right. So
that's $2,200. Yeah. Because everybody's thinking, oh my gosh, $1,100, I can do that. $1,100 each per month.
Yeah. So you want to kind of get that full picture of what you are going to be spending: accommodations, groceries, eating out, drinking out, entertainment, you know, and this is then also going to be including all of those other costs that you have that are those ones that you carry with you. So for us, the insurance, and then if you have any other expenses that you are paying for.
Your fixed expenses, exactly. Now there could be other expenses as well. You take your food and your daily expenses and you add them towards your monthly expenses. But what if you need a new pair of shoes? What if you want to buy a gift for a family and a friend member back home? Those things you have to have some resources for. So you can't spend all your money on your accommodations. You got to leave a little bit left over for emergencies or anything else that might happen.
Yeah, so kind of set up a kind of separate fund, which can be your, wouldn't necessarily call it emergency fund, because we kind of have that as a separate fund, but this is kind of your miscellaneous expense fund is what we call it. All those unexpecteds that come up that you are going to be faced. You know, we do go home at Christmas, so I have my Christmas budget. You know, we need to buy new clothes, we need to replace things, all of that. So you do need to want to make sure that you have a fund for that, because not having a fund set up for that and just relying on your monthly budget is going to make it so it's not going to work.
Well, it's going to cause you to perhaps overspend, because you know, you've got this money over here for gifts and fun stuff. Not even really fun stuff. What if you know, haircuts would be a perfect one. If you need to get a haircut, I get a haircut once a month. Now, they're a lot cheaper anywhere else in the world besides what I was getting back home, but you need to get a haircut eventually. So save money that you don't otherwise put in those other expenses.
Now, like we mentioned, you also need an emergency fund. Now, this emergency fund is going to cover you for all those emergencies. And it doesn't have to necessarily be something massive and big.
Right.
It can just be those, once again, kind of unexpected but bigger things that come up. But, you know, I mean, we know that there, and we talked about before even leaving, there was always going to be that possibility of what if something happened back home and a family member was hurt or ill and we needed to get back quickly.
Right.
Those flights home are not going to be inexpensive. They're last minute. You're taking whatever is available and you're going. You want to make sure you have the money available and set aside for that. So this in itself, the emergency fund, is not necessarily going to be in your yearly budget whatsoever. It is a separate fund completely set aside.
Right. I bought contact lenses recently through that fund. So just things like that come up that you don't normally count on having to do. But you may have to do on the road.
Yeah, and you had a computer that died and needed to replace. That's probably a better example of the emergency.
Yeah, that's a really good example.
That was necessary.
That was a gut shot.
Yeah.
That was a gut shot.
That was a big expense.
But I did survive.
Because you had that emergency fund.
I had that emergency fund.
Yeah, so make sure that you think through all the scenarios that could take place. We all hate to think through those scenarios, but when you are away and you're on a budget, you want to make sure that you have that money set aside. It's not even also just set aside for that. The last thing is like you don't want to be hit with an emergency that then throws you so off kilter that you don't get to travel anymore because now you've dug deep into your other money. And you know, I think that some of you are probably going to ask, like, well, how much do you put away for emergency fund? That is going to be so specific to yourself.
Right.
First off, what emergencies do you foresee happening? How far away are you going to be? For us, it really was putting enough away for a flight home, maybe a couple months living expenses, things like that. You just want to have, you know, enough set aside that's going to keep you on your feet for that period of time.
My emergency fund was my laptop. Now, I needed a laptop that will edit videos and do some stuff that my old laptop just simply couldn't do. So I did have to spend, I'll just tell you, I spent $2,100 on my laptop and it works beautifully, but that was my emergency fund.
That was his, and thankfully he's replenished it. So if there is another emergency, we're good to go. Or he's good to go.
I'm good to go.
Yeah. The other area that we have a separate budget for each year is our travel expenses. Now, this is going to be covering all of our flights. It's going to be covering any of those bigger travel, like we don't have in there hopper flights a lot of the time. Those sometimes will just go into our monthly budget because they can be around $50, $60. But our main international flights that we do yearly, we have a complete separate budget for that so that we kind of know we're staying in range as far as that. That would be hard to work into your monthly budget. So just set up a yearly budget. And I guess for a good example, what we have set aside is we usually try to stay, each of us, in $2,500 for our main international flights. We are now going to be bumping that up, if necessary, to about $3,000 because we have changed to where we're going to be going home 3 times a year.
Yeah, we're going to be going home more often. So to fit that into a monthly budget, there'll be a lot of division and stuff like that involved. So those costs we do include in our year-end videos, but not in our monthly cost of living videos.
Right.
So just be aware of that. So there's we have like 4 different accounts now that we set up, I guess the word.
So we have our monthly budget, we kind of have our emergency budget, and then we've got our flights. So I guess 3 that we have.
Yeah.
You know, but
I tend to exaggerate. Yeah.
It's a lot easier to keep track and to stay on track when you have them budgeted, as far as we have found. Because emergencies you can't count on, and the thing is that you might not use it that year, so that just sits there. And the flights, it's very easy for me when I'm sitting and I can look at what our yearly budget is for our flights. I now know what we've already spent because I keep track of all of that. So I know what we have left. I know what is still available for the year. And it's like, so sometimes we will adjust our yearly plan based on what is left in that account as well. You know, because a good example of that would be flying to Southeast Asia. From where we live, Southeast Asia is on average $1,000, about $1,200 round trip is kind of your average range. Now, if I only have $500 left in our budget, we're not going to Southeast Asia.
Guess where we're going? We're going to Mexico.
We're going to
Mexico.
Mexico.
We're going to Mexico.
Yeah, so you can kind of make those adjustments to your plan based on what is left in that budget as well. So now that you have those 3 budgets, you can now kind of figure out what your yearly and then monthly budget is going to be and what you have to work with.
Now, assessing your income sources, do you have rental property? Are you doing freelance work, a side gig, anything that you might be doing to bring in a little extra money to supplement your travels would be very helpful.
It'd be really helpful, and not only is it helpful towards your budget, it might be helpful towards kind of filling some of that time, because traveling full time, it's fun, but you also can have days that are down days, a lot of down days, honestly, to where you might want something else to do.
Yeah, we covered this a little bit in a different video. You're going to find that you're not partying and vacationing every day when you're doing this. You're going to have something that you want to put your mind to work.
Right. And I think that for us, that is when we were talking about how our budget was so strict, and in the very beginning,
yes,
if we didn't take on doing YouTube, which now helps supplement some of our expenses, we wouldn't have been able to increase our costs that we would spend on accommodations.
No.
And so, just even taking on some little side thing, if maybe you don't want to be on YouTube, but you want to blog or something of that sort, it just brings in a little bit of money to where, all that money that you don't have to pull out of your savings that can be there for later and can continue to compound and you're not touching it is a great thing to do.
If you can bridge the gap from whatever your age is now to wherever you need to be to pull that 401k, that's the goal.
And now that you've kind of looked at, if you are going to be bringing in anything safe from any side job, and then what your expenses are going to be, and kind of figuring out where you stand at this point, what's missing, are you exceeding too much as far as your monthly costs, and now is the time that you want to kind of make those adjustments.
Yeah, I could also add to this that you might have a savings that you can draw from to get you to that gap as well. So it doesn't have to be a side gig. It could also be your savings. But yeah, figure all that out, figure out how much you're going to spend, and there you have it.
And if you're finding that your monthly amount that you're looking at spending is not really matching up with the amount of money that either you are taking out of savings to cover those costs, or maybe making money doing a side gig, then this is the time that you need to now start adjusting that budget. Make those adjustments to either location, accommodations, things that you're going to be going out and doing, maybe not doing those excursions, not eating out so much.
Yeah, and that brings us back to the beginning when we were talking about Spain. You think in hindsight maybe Spain wasn't the best choice. I think it was, simply because we had set that budget, Spain budget. We'd kind of gotten into that groove for those 3 months, and then we go someplace like Romania. Well, we had already set the budget, and now that same budget is working because we're in a less expensive country.
Right, that is very true, and we enjoyed that time in those areas a lot more too, because we did have that little bit of extra money to spend.
Yeah, like we actually went out for food. We got to have some dinners
we got to
out. We got to experience the Romanian cuisine. I had Mitch for the first time. The little sausages. I'm not sure what kind of meat that is, but it was nice. It was salty, which I like.
Well, we also had more money to go out and have drinks out too and enjoy our beer, because they had a good craft beer scene there. Yeah.
It was less expensive. We also went to a movie. We went and saw Top Gun.
We saw Top Gun, which I can't really add as like an extra way expense, because I think it ended up costing us each like $6 with popcorn.
Not only that, but that comes out of our emergency fund. We had to do that. We had to go see Top Gun Maverick. Yeah, that was a great movie, by the way. If you haven't seen it, check it out. But that was something that we might not have done in Spain, because we were so nervous and so budgeted that, and nervous is the perfect word for it too.
Yeah.
I mean, we were scared.
Nervous
at
budget.
the time. Yeah, we were. Yeah, I wasn't.
Yeah, not nervous of
I wasn't
anything
afraid
else.
of the Spanish people. They're great.
Yeah.
It was that expense, and what are we doing? How are we going to do it? We were confident, cautiously confident, I could say.
Yeah, and I would say that kind of the whole point of this here and what we're talking about is that all of these areas are super adjustable. You know, short of your set monthly expenses that you already have for like us with our insurance,
Right.
all the other areas for us are very flexible and adjustable. So one of the things that we have always discussed is that if we are in a situation, so for instance, here's a good example. Last year we spent a bit more money than we knew we were going to spend it. It wasn't like it came by any surprise, but we spent more than we wanted to spend this year. So this year we decided that we are going to travel a little bit to less expensive areas, save some money, and not spend as much and kind of make up that difference of what we spent last year.
Right, you're talking about 2023, correct?
Right, yes.
So in 2023, well, we went to Southeast Asia for a good almost 5.5 months, saved our money, really got budgeted. It's easy to do in Southeast Asia to get budgeted. And then we went to Germany and Italy and did the expensive stuff.
Yeah, and we ended up expending well beyond what we normally spend in a month because we traveled very fast through Central Europe, and we were in Italy for 2.5 months, and right in the heat of the summer, not just heat of the summer, but tourist season, so everything was more expensive.
Right.
And for those people that ask, like, well, why did you go there in the heat of summer? You know what? We have to travel somewhere. We travel full time, so we are going to be somewhere in the summer months. So, you know, but I think that the kind of the whole moral of this is that you can adjust your budget. So even when we feel like we have maybe expended a bit too much one year or even a couple months in a row, we can adjust and go like, okay, well, we can eat in a lot more and not go out for as many beers. And no, we're not going to do that extra entertainment thing or excursion or whatever that is that we're going to go do. And so you can rein it in, I guess.
Yeah, you can rein it in. And yes, I can rein in my beers. I don't have to go for a beer.
It's hard,
I can do it. I can do it if I need to. Carrie's point is you can find ways to cut corners, just like you can back home. Okay, so now you're out there, you're traveling the world, you're having a great time, it's everything you dreamed of. Don't forget to monitor that budget. Keep looking at it, keep adding it up. It can sneak up on you.
It really can.
It really can.
Yeah. You know, I use an app. It's called Travel Spend. I use their free version. They do have a paid version. And what I do is I just keep track of, and this may sound incredibly tedious to a lot of people, but I keep track of every penny we spend. If we go out and we have a beer, it gets entered. If we go to the grocery store, it gets entered. Obviously, any of our accommodations, all of our other expenses are in there, all the miscellaneous, and you can label them in those categories. So at the end of the month, I then can transfer it all over. I have an Excel spreadsheet. And the reason that we kind of do this, first off...
I don't want to say we. First of all, it does sound incredibly tedious. And it's something that I personally would never do. That's why I have Carrie do it.
You did it in the very
beginning.
beginning.
I did it in the beginning. It was incredibly tedious.
It lasted a few months.
And Carrie said, you know what, Brian, I love you so much that why don't you just let me do it for you? And I said, thank you, Carrie. That'd be wonderful.
He actually just stopped doing it, so now I just keep track of his expenses.
Actually, that's how it happened. I go, I can't do this anymore. But I have learned that by doing this, at least one of the two of you, if you're flying solo, you got to do it yourself. But I do think it is important to stay on top of your expenses because things sound like fun. Let's go kayaking. Let's go snorkeling. Let's go do these things.
Even just the simple things. Let's go out to dinner again tonight. Let's go out again tomorrow
Let's
night.
go have another beer down by the beach.
Yeah, it's very easy to not realize how much they've added up until you really go through and look at it all. And our budget will keep track of the total. So when I go on to this app, I see what the actual total expenses are for that month now to this point, right? So I kind of will generally know, like, okay, we are reaching that point, you know, of, okay, we're almost to the end here. So let's not go do that or whatever, and rein it in a little bit. But I think being aware is going to help you a lot more in the long run. And so what I do is, back to that, I take all of the expenses at the end of that month and I put them into a spreadsheet, and I then have all of those months that we've traveled at the end of the year, and it just keeps tallying it up. And so I know exactly what we are on track for the year and for the month at this point. And I just think that knowledge is going to keep you traveling. If you don't pay attention to that, you are very likely to have to end your travel soon because you ran out of money.
And I'm just going to say, you don't have to do it the way Carrie does it with the spreadsheets, and she's got,
I love spreadsheets.
She gets into it. That's cool. That's great for her. If it was just me, I'd have a pen and a tablet, not a tablet, but a piece of paper folder, and I'd write my stuff down. That's better for me. It might be better for you as well. I think we're all kind of the same demographic here. I think pen to paper sometimes is a lot easier for most of us, Carrie.
I like a spreadsheet. There are a few things that you want to kind of just pay attention to in your travels, and these are going to affect you more yearly, and that is higher costs if you're going to be traveling, say during, like we just mentioned, the heat of the summer. Costs are going to be higher. Tourist seasons, those things are just going to, you do have to be somewhere, and it's hard to avoid them at all costs, because no matter where you travel to, it's going to be high season somewhere.
It's going to be high season somewhere. We do try and go home for a stretch in the summertime to where we're either house sitting or staying with family, but we got to leave.
Right.
And we got to be somewhere.
Yeah.
And that somewhere is going to cost money.
Right. And just so kind of pay attention to that as well. And like we mentioned, we do go home, and we do love being home in the summer, but part of that can be strategically planned, because the time that we're not having to, say, be in Europe in the middle of the summer where things are extremely expensive, but we can be at home and we can be doing house sitting, which would be another thing I would point out. If you are looking to save money on accommodation, check out house sitting. You can do this worldwide. You're not paying for your accommodations, which is your most expensive thing that you're going to be covering each month when you are traveling.
Yeah, if you just did that 1 month out of the entire year, it could put you back on course. We'll leave that link below too.
Right. So you do want to just kind of pay attention to your full yearly budget at this point. Make sure that you are taking into account, if you've looked and said, okay, well, here's where we're going to go throughout this time. Make sure when you're checking all those expenses for the months you're going to be traveling, that it's actually for the month you're going to be traveling, because you're going to see variation in the costs, especially in accommodations.
Yeah. Okay, now we're not done yet. There's one more expense that you need to be aware of, and that's just your yearly clothing, or any expense that you might have to upgrade your bag or your luggage. Those things, they don't necessarily come out of an emergency fund, but they have to come from someplace. So just keep in account that you might need new shorts, a new shirt, new shoes is a big one. This shirt, I've had this shirt on now for 6 days, I think, because it's the only shirt
he washes it.
I have left.
I wash it.
Yeah, sometimes I wash it, sometimes I don't. But the fact of the matter is I'm going to need new clothes when I get home, and I'm going to have to purchase those clothes with money from someplace. So I need to count that into my budget.
Right, and there's other things that you want to think about too, and that are going to come up. What if you have to renew your passport? That comes with a fee.
Right.
What budget is that going to come out of? And then also some of these places that you travel to have visa costs and stuff. So there's a lot of kind of those costs that often we don't think about. We just look at our monthly costs or our travel cost, travel expenses.
Right.
But there's also that kind of area, and this can kind of be part of that miscellaneous fund that you have. But think through, and one way to kind of make sure that you're staying on track with a lot of these things is, we suggested this in a recent video, track all of your expenses right now when you are at home, even for a couple months. And if you don't want to track it down to the penny, don't do that.
Use a pen and paper.
But do all those unexpected things that came up that you were like, oh crap, I have to do that. And write those things down, or track them however you would like to, because you don't think about a lot of them. Those little things, those little fees that you have to pay on things that you may still have to pay.
Right.
You may not think about. So make sure that you just are going in with, I guess, the clearest picture possible.
You said it earlier perfectly, just be aware. Be aware of what may come down the road. If your bag has a rip in it, you might have to replace that bag. If your socks have holes in them, you might have to buy new socks. Just little things like that that you're not always thinking of down the road.
Right, and I think the main goal for all of us is to make sure that we get our budget so on track and so set up that we can continue to do what we are doing and not be thrown off of that track. And so the more prep and planning that you can do ahead of time is going to be what keeps you going and traveling. Well, we hope that you found this helpful as you are trying to figure out how to plan your full-time adventure of traveling. Now, if you would like to find us on other social networks, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on YouTube, of course, and that is at Brian and Carrie. And then you can also find us on our website at brianandcarrietravels.com. And we have some really great free resources on there as well, so be sure to check those out. And we will catch you next time. Cheers.